global trade and energy are being subtly redrawn by an Arctic alliance. Ottawa is forging a new path across the Atlantic towards Norway, a leader in offshore infrastructure, Arctic shipping, and natural gas, while Washington imposes tariffs and wagers on pricey U.S. LNG. This goes beyond pipes. It's a strategic move in the intensifying competition for influence in the Arctic. Can the United States afford to allow this collaboration dictate the rules? That is the true question. Greetings from Geocapitalist, where we unravel the secrets of world wealth, one change in power at a time. For many years, Canada was seen by the U.S. as a dependable northern ally that was nearly exclusively in line with U.S. trade and energy objectives. However, new routes that avoid the historically U.S.-controlled choke points are connecting Europe Strait to Asia as the Arctic ice recedes. The northern waterways of Canada are suddenly more than just a frozen boundary. They could be a lifeline for the economy. Norway then emerges as the ideal partner in this situation. Norway contributes top-notch Arctic knowledge from the Barents Sea's offshore gas extraction industry to cutting-edge icebreakers. In contrast, Canada is in charge of vital entry points like the Northwest Passage. Together, they have the power to influence global supply flows valued at hundreds of billions of dollars by 2050, in addition to regional commerce. Resources are only one aspect of the collaboration. Influence is the key. Canada is establishing itself as a link between North America and Europe in the Arctic by collaborating with Norway. For Washington, this implies that an increasing portion of international trade may go without its direct supervision. This is the tale of why the U.S. is powerless to stop Canada from joining forces with Norway. Most people associate Arctic cooperation with cold borders or defense tactics. However, energy is the true motivator here. Global markets may be reshaped as a result of Canada and Norway's covert alignment of their natural gas plants. Both nations have enormous gas and LNG potential reserves. With projects on the East Coast, Canada has been attempting to increase its capacity to export liquefied natural gas, and Norway continues to be Europe's top gas supplier following Russia's collapse. The Arctic is now the gathering place. This is why it's important. Stable energy partners are desperately needed in Europe. Although Norway now supplies more than 25% of Europe's gas, it cannot continue to grow without additional logistical connections. With its Atlantic coast, Canada is establishing itself as an extra supply pillar that complements Norway rather than competes with it. They are working together to map out an energy corridor that connects pipelines, deep water ports, and LNG facilities via Arctic shipping lanes. The economics are strong. Redundancy is introduced in Europe's supply chains. Canada acquires stable, long-term purchasers. Furthermore, Norway's influence goes beyond Scandinavia. In geopolitics, however, it is considerably more significant. By working together to coordinate LNG infrastructure, Ottawa and Oslo lessen Europe's need on the U.S. LNG shipments, subtly weakening the influence of Washington. What appears to be a straightforward energy cooperation is actually a strategic reorganization of who is in charge of Arctic energy flow. Additionally, timing is crucial. As the demand for petrol in Asia plateaus and changes in Europe, Canada, and as the twin anchors of Atlantic energy security, Norway sees an opportunity to solidify their position. In addition to oil, the Arctic is becoming one of the world's most strategically important shipping lanes. Shorter, less expensive routes are becoming more common due to melting ice and advancements in navigation technology. Feasible. This implies that Canada's Northwest Passage may eventually develop into a major international trading route. The Northern Sea route is already essential to Norway's transportation between Europe and Asia. These routes operate together to form a North Atlantic Arctic maritime network, which shortens the time it takes for goods to travel between Asia, North America, and Europe by about 40%. Shipping businesses can save money thanks to this efficiency, which also gives them more control over international supply chains. In order to successfully coordinate port development, icebreaker support, and digital navigation systems, Canada and Norway are coordinating their policies. Similar to the Panama Canal, but spanning thousands of miles of ocean, is the Arctic. The geopolitical viewpoint is as follows. A large portion of international trade flows are controlled by whoever controls Arctic shipping. It presents a problem for Washington. The U.S. Navy is unable to project domination in the Arctic is similar to that in the Pacific or Atlantic. There is a Hoover as a result. One is being filled jointly by Canada and Norway. They are establishing standards, determining taxes, and influencing the flow of commodities in ways that the U.S. cannot by organizing shipping lanes. Dictate with ease. For this reason, shipping in the Arctic involves more than simply boats and ice. It concerns strategic positioning, regulatory clout, and economic might in an area that is rapidly emerging as the next global trade frontier. Although shipping and energy garner the most attention, Canada's core security is cooperation, not in the conventional sense of bases and soldiers, but rather in terms of infrastructure protection, surveillance, and cooperation. The Arctic is a delicate region. Digital cables, shipping channels, and pipelines all go through some of the most hostile environments on the planet. Continents can be affected by a single mishap, from specialized Coast Guard troops trained for polar waters to satellite systems. Norway has decades of experience in Arctic monitoring. In comparison, Canada has a large land area, but little infrastructure in the Arctic. Together, they establish a more robust safety net, coordinate emergency procedures, share satellite surveillance, and conduct cooperative Coast Guard operations. In addition to its economic benefits, this collaboration is essential for shipping and energy. Arctic ventures are considered high risk by insurance firms. Ottawa and Oslo make it more affordable and appealing for investors to fund LNG plants, port expansions, and underwater cable projects by showcasing robust military security frameworks. In contrast, the U.S. has little influence on Arctic security. Music, historically, its emphasis has been somewhere else. As a result, Canada and Norway are in the unique position of establishing operating guidelines for safety in an area that Washington is unable to adequately monitor. The outcome is subdued yet impactful. U.S. influence alone no longer determines North Atlantic security. Rather, it is being subtly redesigned by practical Canada partnership with Norway that prioritizes their common interests. In recent years, Europe has been taught a terrible lesson. Dependency on energy is a risk. Norway filled the void left by Russian gas's unreliability, increasing its shipments to all-time highs. However, Norway is aware that it cannot bear the full weight of Europe. This is the role of Canada. LNG projects in Canada, such as those in Nova Scotia, are planned with Europe in mind. Canada can connect with Norway's current distribution networks in order to bypass infrastructure duplication and deliver gas straight into Europe's energy system. With this plug-and-play approach, Europe can secure its energy future with two Arctic republics. This builds resilience. In the event that one supply line is interrupted, whether the other leaders in Europe view this as a lifeline in the event of storms, technical malfunctions, or political roadblocks, particularly as the demand for natural gas is still high while the switch to renewable energy sources is underway. Although it is costly and susceptible to changes in domestic legislation, the U.S. nevertheless exports a sizable amount of LNG to Europe. Europe can rely on reliable allies who don't link energy supplies to political circumstances by relying on Canada and Norway. Price is no longer the exclusive value of that predictability. Energy security is not the only issue here. It concerns Europe's capacity to stand apart from both Moscow and Washington. And it is precisely the reason for the geopolitical importance of the Canada-Norway cooperation. In a world where economies may be made or broken by dependency, it allows Europe some breathing room. Washington believed it would continue to be the North Atlantic center for many years, security and energy. However, that computation is altered by Canada's alignment with Norway. In areas where American influence is secondary, the U.S. is observing two close allies construct infrastructure from LNG pipelines to Arctic ports. LNG is exported from the U.S. to Europe. Yes, but those supplies rely on long maritime routes that are susceptible to bottlenecks and GF Coast terminals. Canada and Norway, on the other hand, are providing Europe with stability, efficiency, and closeness. It's challenging to compete with that. It's delicate politically. Washington wishes to continue to be in charge in international energy diplomacy in NATO. In reality, however, Canada and Norway are creating systems that circumvent U.S. authority without overtly opposing it. It's not conflict. The fact that it is a covert evasion can be much more potent. The visuals are also important. For Canada was viewed as Washington's subordinate partner for decades. However, Ottawa is indicating independence in a way that few anticipated by treating Norway as an equal. It's a little but important change. It demonstrates that U.S. allies can create parallel structures outside of America's orbit. Although its power is waning, the U.S. can still affect Arctic policy. For once, Washington is looking in from the outside as Canada and Norway write the rules of a new North Atlantic order. Nothing that originates in the Arctic remains there. Decisions in South America, Africa, and Asia are already being influenced by Canada and Norway's alliance. South Korean and Japanese LNG purchasers are reassessing contracts in light of the possibility that North Atlantic gas could provide greater stability than Middle Eastern substitutes. African countries are also researching the Arctic port models as models for their own infrastructure along the coast.